I'll send out the replay after the talk today. But yeah, so mostly so far, I have worked primarily with faculty or people who have finished their graduate program and decided they don't want to go into academia. And I'm referring to my course where I teach people how to become editors or coaches. Um, but I've realized there is an interest among other folks in higher ed, especially now in the last few weeks, I think, where maybe you're looking for other options. And so I'm going to talk today about what it means to be an academic editor or coach, what skills you already have that prepare you for doing that type of work, um, and some of the steps that you can take to move into that kind of role, whether you are wanting to do this as a side hustle, just, 5 to 10 hours a week, or whether you are interested in doing this full time, as a new career, or like Denise was saying, as a post-retirement option. There's really the sky is the limit with these sorts of things, and you could really have a lot of flexibility to model the business and the freelancing opportunities as you choose. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We have, oops, and I will stick around at the end so that we have plenty of time for questions. I'm also going to choose two volunteers if anybody's interested after I do this initial part of the talk to do hot seat coaching. And basically, I'll ask you to tell me a little bit about your background and what you think you might want to do as a coach or an editor or whatever it is that interests you. And I can sort of work with you quickly here to give you a plan for that. Okay. Everybody can see the slides okay? Yeah, great. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm Paulina Cossette, and my company is Acadia Editing Services. And so the goal of today is to show you that, if you're unhappy in academia, you're looking for other options, there is an alternative career path out there for you. There are options for a side hustle to help you bring in extra income. And I want to challenge the common misconception that's out there that the only alternatives to academic jobs are 9 to 5 jobs. That's absolutely not true. My experience is that owning a business gives you ultimate flexibility. And so that's a huge advantage, especially for people who have kids or who like to travel or whatever your situation is. And so that's definitely something that applies here. So by the end of this hour, you will have learned what academic editing and coaching involve, how you can find freelance jobs and clients, and how working with me in my course and group coaching program, Becoming an Academic Editor, can help you earn $100 an hour or more during your first year as an editor or coach. Okay. So I'll give you a little background about myself so you know who's up here talking to you. I'm a former political science professor. I taught American politics, of all things. I grew up in Florida. I had 2 tenure track jobs before I left academia in 2019. And I had a lot of success in publishing. I enjoyed teaching. I had good student evaluations, right? I was really on track to get tenure, and I was doing all the things that I was supposed to do. But I found that I was still constantly stressed out and really miserable, and finding that academia was actually quite unbearable for me. Um, Around this same time, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with lung cancer. I had just changed schools, so starting my second tenure track job, thinking that maybe things would get better if I was in a different school in a different department. But I continued to have a lot of encounters with students that were pretty traumatic, issues with plagiarism and politics and all kinds of things that just made it too much to try to stay on. My husband and I were also living in a city that we didn't like. We were far from our family. And so, I think it's common for a lot of people where you have a health scare like that, that really puts things in perspective and makes you realize, what's the most important things in life. And for us, it was family over career. Um, so we knew that we wanted to move back to Maine to be closer to our family. But I also knew that if we did that, the chances of me landing an academic job were slim to none just because of where we live now. I finally reached my breaking point when my son was about a year old. I was working 7 days a week and I was drowning. And during the summer of 2019, I finally broke. I knew that I could not go back to teaching in the fall, even though I was scheduled to teach that fall. The thought of going back made my stomach churn. But at the same time, I also felt this intense guilt about letting other people down. Everybody from my grad school advisors to my colleagues and my students, and this conflict between wanting to fulfill my needs and not wanting to let other people down was created this perfect storm of just crippling anxiety. And I was terrified to leave academia, but I knew that I couldn't go back. So finally, I got up the courage, called my department chair, resigned, and in July we made the decision to sell our house and leave, and move to Maine. I had no idea what I was going to do for work, but I knew that I couldn't keep going the way that I was. After we moved to Maine, I applied to a lot of non-academic jobs. I had several interviews, but I kept getting told that I was overqualified, which was, I'm sure if you've experienced this, you know how frustrating it is. But thankfully, I had just published my book and worked with a copy editor who worked for the publisher. And before this, I had no idea that copy editors existed or what they did. I'd never worked with one before. But I thought, I need a job. And so I can do this for a little while until I get, quote unquote, a real job. And so for about 6 months, I spent hours online sorting through job ads. And if you've ever Googled remote work editor or something like that, you know how much nonsense comes up, and how hard it is to figure out what's real and what's a scam. But eventually I figured it out. I got freelance positions with several editing agencies and academic presses. And, the ball started rolling, and I had a daughter, and, I was only working about 20 hours a week because of kids. But it was working out, and I was making money and I was making progress and my business was growing. And so it took a few years to find companies that pay better and to start attracting my own clients. But looking back, I realized that it never should have taken this long. Aside from having the kids, which they're lovely, they're wonderful, but I didn't have any guidance on how to build my business, and I was scared to work with private clients because I had this imposter syndrome and was like, oh, I can't do that. I can't charge that much. Um, and so there were just no resources at the time for me to draw on to figure out how to do all of this sort of business type stuff, which I had no experience in. But eventually I figured it out. Over the last 2 years, I've had tremendous success. I started out at the end of 2022 with just 6 private clients. Last year, I think I ended up with over 35. And this year to date, I'm already at over 50 clients who I've worked with, some on multiple projects. And I've also had to turn a lot of people away because I just don't have the time to take them on. So for me, the best part about freelancing, besides the fact that I earn almost twice as much as I did as a professor and work just 30 hours a week, is that I'm able to schedule the work when I want to do it and not based on the academic calendar or when some administrator needs me to go to meetings or I have to go to faculty meetings or whatever. I take vacations, as you can see, without any guilt or doing any work. And not, I was never able to do that when I was a professor. I always took work with me. I always had to spend time writing, doing research. And I felt horrible whenever I wasn't doing those things, even if I was on a vacation. So I'll stop there with my story. But the point of telling you all of this is to show you that it is possible for you to have a life that you've always wanted, even if it's outside academia or even if it's as a side hustle. I left and I've never regretted it for a second. And in fact, I've never been happier. So, moving on to the topics for today. Like I said, we'll talk about what skills you already have that make you well suited to launch an editing or coaching business. I'll walk you through my framework that I teach in my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. It's a three-step process for launching your business, either as a side hustle or a full-time career. And then again, I'll choose two of you volunteers to do the hot seat coaching and help you make a plan for how you might want to move forward with the particular business that you're interested in. So first, let me cover this sort of two main types of academic editing. And when you get into the editing world as as a professional arena, there's a lot of different terms that you'll learn, different types of editing. People have different names for them, but I break them up into basically two types. One is what we call developmental editing, which is, looking at the big picture of a text. Usually this is longer projects like books. And this involves you looking at the overall structure of, say, the book and working with the author to make sure that that organization is clear, that the book has a clear thesis, that each chapter has a clear thesis of its own that supports the book's overall argument, that the flow of the chapters makes sense, all those kinds of big picture questions. The second type of editing that we usually see is either called copy or line editing. And this is sort of the red pen edits that you think of where somebody is cleaning up the language, correcting grammar, punctuation, making sure that the argumentation is clear, that's a good flow. And I find that people tend to be drawn to either one of these two. And so for me personally, I enjoy copy editing. I really like digging into at the sentence level and cleaning up language. I also do developmental edits, but my preference is for copy editing. I also know a lot of people who, for them it's the reverse. They prefer doing developmental edits, working on books. They may also combine book coaching with that kind of work. Those two things really fit really well together. When you're starting out as an academic editor, you will typically work at a few different places. These are places you can find work as a freelancer. The first is what we call editing agencies. These are companies like Inego or Scribendi, Editor World. Taylor and Francis has an arm of their company where they hire freelancers to edit papers that come in to be published in their journals. And usually what happens is clients, many of them are English language learners. They will go to the website for this company and submit their paper. The website or the company, sends it out to one of their freelancers, like what you would be doing if you were working there, and you edit the document and then you send it back. And so the downsides of these types of companies is they don't pay very well. But I recommend that my people in my community start out at places like this because you can focus on building those editing skills. You don't have to worry about marketing or, going out and finding clients or negotiating prices or anything like that. It's all handled by the agency, and it's really simplifies the process for you so that you can focus on honing your editing skills, as you're starting out in this business. Academic journals or book publishers is fairly self-explanatory. Many journals and presses will hire freelancers to do those copy edits before the book goes to print or before the journal's issue goes to print. And then finally, we have what I call the holy grail of clients, and that's private clients. These could be graduate students. You can edit dissertations, um, job market materials. I've worked on a lot of people's letters when they're on the job market. And then, of course, faculty. This could be anything from journal articles, book proposals, books. I've even edited tenure packets. And so there's a lot of options out there for you. There's somebody in my cohort specializes in working with people on their grant proposals. So again, whatever it is that interests you, the doors are wide open. And the reason I love working with private clients so much is not just that you're going to earn more money than you would working for an editing agency, but also that there's a lot of people I've worked with for years, and we talk about our personal lives and our kids, and I edited their job materials, then their journal articles, and a book. And so you have these sort of ongoing relationships that keep you connected to academia without having to actually be in academia, which is nice. So, as far as coaching, again, this is really all about your personal preference. If there is something that you know how to do, if there is a problem that you know how to solve for people, um, you can be a coach on that, right? And I think we as academics, especially if you've been in any kind of mentoring or faculty or any kind of role like that, you have essentially been a coach to your students. And so maybe you're good at publishing and you want to help people get published. Maybe you like working with graduate students and you want to help them finish their dissertation. One of the members of my cohort, she has training as an executive function coach, and she decided during our program that she wants to work specifically with graduate students and early career faculty who have ADHD to help them build strategies to get their writing done and get published. Um, Somebody else I know helps faculty plan sabbaticals. And so she's sort of a coach where she's done a sabbatical before and she knows what it takes to make all those plans for travel and everything. And she now works as a coach helping people do that. So it's really up to you in what direction you want to go in terms of coaching. What skills do you need to be an editor or a coach? For editing, you need to be a strong writer, usually. With copy editing, it's particularly important that you have an eagle eye, that you can catch, all those typos. If you're the kind of person like me who sees typos everywhere, and likes to correct them, this is a great job for you. With developmental editing, the catching typos in the eagle eye isn't as important, but it is important that you understand, for example, what does it take to write a good book? How should a book be structured, right? All of that stuff we talked about earlier with developmental editing. Um, and then also, of course, if you're going to be a coach, you need people skills. Even as an editor, that helps because you're dealing with all kinds of personalities. Authors like to work in different ways, they have different patterns of work, and so it helps if you're able to accommodate that. But what I tell the people in my community is that you already have these skills, right? If you have graded papers, if you have supervised student research, if you've done peer review work, if you've served on journals, all of these skills are academic editing skills. You have them inside you. You have an innate sense of what academic research is supposed to sound like when it's written. And we may not call it academic editing skills, when we're serving as faculty or as advisors, but it's all there, and it's very easy to apply it from an academic setting, to transfer it over into the business that you end up creating. So my three-step process then is this. First, it's quite similar for editing and coaching, but I'll go over the editing first. In the course, what we do is we start off by having you draft a one-page resume. And again, this is because I recommend, and you can do whatever you want here, but what I recommend is for people to apply to these editing agencies or to book publishers, again, so you can get that practice. I think of it as on-the-job training. And so there are options out there where you could go to, say, the University of Chicago or San Diego. They have online programs where you can pay $5,000 or $6,000 to get an editing certificate, and that will teach you the nuances of how to be an editor, specifically a copy editor mainly. But I don't believe that people with graduate level training, whether you're faculty or otherwise, if you're familiar with what scholarly writing is supposed to look and sound like, I don't believe that you need to get that kind of editing certificate. And in fact, I've heard from other faculty who have done the editing certificates, and they said that really wasn't that helpful. And so that's why I take this approach in my course is um, treat these early jobs at editing agencies as on-the-job training where you're not paying somebody else to teach you to edit. You're actually getting paid to do this work. Um, and really, you don't need to be there for more than 6 months doing this kind of work. And as you are working there, you can move on to step two, which is to do things like create a basic website. It could be just one page, and we walk you through that in the course. Um, you can spruce up your LinkedIn profile, right? Start connecting with people on LinkedIn, build your network, connect with colleagues, people you know in academia. We also talk about how you can send cold emails to faculty who are in the fields that you are connected to, that you have expertise in. And so this obviously is, people aren't writing academic articles every day. And so it may be that you say you connect with somebody via email and let them know that you're becoming an editor, and it's not for another 4 or 5 months that they actually have a project that they can send to you. And so that's why I advocate you start with these editing agencies, start getting the work coming in, start practicing your editing, become an expert in Microsoft Words, track changes, and all of that stuff. None of this is very hard, but it does take a little time. And as you're doing that, you can sort of work this networking angle to start laying the groundwork, planting the seeds to get some more private clients. And then finally, the third step, and this can be accomplished within your first year as an editor, is to gradually increase your editing speed. Editing agencies pay a per word rate, and that's what I recommend that editors charge, is per word rather than by the hour. And so as you get more skilled with Microsoft Word, as you become more familiar with the editing process, you learn become an expert in APA or Chicago or whatever you edit in, it becomes a lot easier. You can work faster. And so that increases your effective hourly rate. At the same time, as you move into working with more private clients, you will also gradually increase your rates as you get more experience. And so this sort of has the double effect of increasing the hourly rate that you end up making as you become more experienced. And some of the members of my first cohort, which started in July, they have been working through this process. You can see on the screen, I've been showing some testimonials from them. They're already earning about $50 an hour on projects because they've gotten more comfortable. They're working for some editing agencies. They're getting this experience. They're getting faster. They've worked on dissertations with graduate students, and it's getting easier and easier. And so just a few months in, they're already earning $50 an hour. When we look at coaching, the 3 steps that I suggest, again, are pretty similar to editing. But first, we work with you in the course to define your niche. And so you may have an idea starting out where you think, well, I want to work with people on publishing or writing or time management or sabbaticals or whatever it may be. Um, And so we really try to narrow down for you who is it that you are helping and what problems are you going to help them solve. And so, for example, Julia Galindo, who was she's the one who was the trained executive function coach. When she first started in July, she had no idea what she wanted to do. But she went through these exercises in the course and she narrowed it down to graduate students and postdocs primarily. Um, we just helped her design her website and her coaching offers and, make a plan for what services is she going to offer to whom, and all of those sorts of things. And this is a post that she made on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. This was actually an offer that she came up with herself, and it was to work with students who are applying to college. And so she was offering some coaching slots to help them, give feedback on their admissions essays, including a 30-minute Zoom call to talk about it and give advice. And so that's something she came up with, the cohort has since been over, but she's been doing an amazing job. You can check her out on LinkedIn. She's blogging and, offering these kinds of coaching sessions and doing fabulous work. Um, so that's the second stage, just like with editing, is to network, to let people know that you exist. We help you develop a basic web page. You don't have to be, advanced technically to do this. It's pretty easy. Spruce up your LinkedIn profile, email colleagues, all of that stuff. Just kind of let people know that you exist, put your name in front of them so that when they need an editor or they need a coach, you're the person who's top of mind that they can go to get help. And the big thing with coaching, I think, here is, when you first start, of course, you're not going to charge the maximum rate for coaching. There's coaches out there that make $400 or $500 an hour. You're not going to do that until you're more experienced and you have a base of clients. But I do work with folks in the community to help encourage them to know that you need to charge what you're worth. And so when Julia was first starting, she felt pretty bad about she's a very nice person and she felt bad about charging more than 30 or $40 an hour as a coach. And I said, absolutely not. You have to charge at least $100 an hour when you were doing these coaching sessions because she's has an ed D, she's was in the Harvard writing taught in the Harvard writing program. You have to think in terms of how much value you are offering people. Don't think about it as your hourly rate and what you're earning or like that you're taking this money away from people. Think about the value that you are offering them. And I guarantee you're offering them a lot more than $100 an hour in value, whether you are editing or coaching or whatever you decide to do. So, that is essentially, very quickly, my framework that I'm teaching in the course. It is a self-paced digital course. Let me give you the link in case you want to look, and then in the chat. Here we go. This page gives you some more information on the course itself. Um, there's sort of two components. It is a self-paced digital course that has videos and like resume templates, invoice templates, contracts, basically the business starter kit, everything that you need to get the business started, to start freelancing. And the videos where I go through 6 modules and explain sort of all the stuff that I've been talking about today. At the same time, you get lifetime access to that course. Um, Once you enroll, you get immediate access to the course. And then we have the 12-week group coaching program, which is done on a cohort model. So we are on week 8 right now of our current cohort that started in September. The next one will start in January. I've capped these cohorts at 10 seats, so there's only 4 spots left for the January one. The next, I think we will start in May. Um, And so you can enroll in the course at any time, get immediate access to the videos and the templates, and even our course community, which is, it's sort of like a Facebook group, but it's not on Facebook. It's hosted on Thinkific, where the course is. Um, and you can interact with people, everybody who's ever enrolled in the course is in that community. So you get to see, like Julia, who I mentioned, she recently posted this feedback on her first time editing a dissertation. And so everybody who's new, who's in the community, gets to benefit not just from my feedback answering your questions, but also hearing the feedback from other students and seeing the questions they ask, and the suggestions that they give. And then when it comes time to start your cohort, we would do 12 weeks of 1 hour Zoom calls. Right now we meet on Wednesdays, but that time is flexible for each particular cohort. Um, and so again, that would start in January. We meet once a week on Zoom, and I do a mix of teaching and question and answer. You can talk about whatever your challenges are. It's sort of like an open office hours on Zoom, for that particular cohort. So everybody's starting out the cohort at the same time and progressing through the 12 weeks, talking about the material and all of that. When you finish the course, you will have a plan and tools for starting your business. You'll know the basics of academic editing and coaching and how to find clients. And I think what is most important, again, is that you'll be in this supportive community of people who are just like you. So we are all connected to academia or higher ed in one way or another. We've all decided that it is not the rosy place that we thought it was going to be. And, uh, probably half of the members, I think we're at almost 30 people now who are enrolled. Probably about half are still in academia and, thinking about leaving or waiting for the right time to leave. Or even I have somebody she's got her degree in medicine and she does medical editing and she has no plans to leave. She's just doing this as a side hustle. So there's a mix of, subfields and backgrounds and all of that. The regular investment for the course is $19.97. Again, there's only 4 spots left. Um, when people first join my email list, you get a $500 discount. You have 7 days from when you join the list to take advantage of that discount. So the regular price is $14.97 for that. Um, Again, 4 spots left. And today, to thank you for being here, I am offering a special offer. There's only 3 of these available. If you enroll before tomorrow, and you're one of those 3 people, you will get a free 60-minute coaching call with me. You can use this at any time between now and when your cohort ends. So if you want to have a 60-minute coaching call with me to talk about your ideas, your questions, how to make the most of the 12 weeks, whatever's on your mind. We can do that before the cohort starts. If you want to wait and do it towards the end of the cohort, the 12 weeks, and, use that time to get feedback from me on how to move forward from there. It's totally up to you. You have until, like I said, until the end of that 12-week cohort, depending which one you join. And, if you're not ready to join in January, that's fine. We can put you in the May cohort or, anytime in the next year or so. Also, if you are one of those 3 people to enroll before tomorrow, and I should give you the link to enroll if I'm asking you to do that. Here we go. This is for those 3 spots. You can use that link. You will also get access to my course, Essential Skills for Academic Editors. And so this is a set of video walkthroughs where I share my screen and I show you exactly how to edit different types of documents. So I do an example walkthrough of journal article. and an example walkthrough of a dissertation. And so I show you all the tools in Microsoft Word that you need, and how to go step by step through each of those documents and apply the different heading styles and all of that, which the students who are in the course who have also enrolled in that's sold separately. They've said that it's a lifesaver, and has been really helpful. So again, this particular offer of the free coaching and the free essential skills course is limited to 3 people, and it will expire tomorrow. The last time I did this, it sold out during the call. So please let us know if you enroll. But let me go from there to, if I can find my, oh, where'd it go? Oh, there we are. Okay. I do want to take questions, but first, if we can, I would like to take a couple of volunteers and walk you through some coaching if you'd like to do that. Is there anybody thinking you might be interested in being an editor or a coach of some kind, and you would be willing to share a bit about your background and what direction you think you might want to go?
I can volunteer.
Yeah,
Um,
Lisa, tell us about yourself.
well, I'm an associate professor in computer science, specializing in human-computer interaction, and I feel a lot of similar things that you mentioned about academia as an institution. I love working with students. I love teaching them how to do research. I've always been good writer, eagle eye for grammar. So I thought about academic editing for a long time. But I think coaching might also be an opportunity to focus on the pieces of the work that I like the most, that I find the most fulfilling.
Say again, what type of coaching?
I mean, one of my the parts I'm most interested in it would be the idea of designing a research study and, sort of the conceptual design and execution plan, you know, and perhaps how to adjust that when things don't go the way you expect. Um, but yeah, so I haven't fully given this another thought.
Yeah. I see in the chat you mentioned you're at University of Florida, which is where I got my PhD, so that's fun.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think editing and coaching go really well together if you are focused on any kind of, coaching aspects related to writing or publishing or anything like that. And there are a lot of editors out there who do that. So, yeah, so for you, I would recommend, exactly the process that I've walked through, where, whether you're ready to leave your academic job or not, if you just want to pick it up as a side hustle. If you were to enroll, we would walk you through the process of creating a one-page resume, emphasizing the editing skills that you already have, just sort of framing them as in a non-academic way, making a resume instead of a CV. Um, and getting you to apply to some of these editing agencies. Since you have more of like a math and science background, there are a lot of agencies that look specifically for, people in the natural sciences and math. And so I would suggest you target those companies. Um, and use that as an opportunity, like I said earlier, to gain that experience, to get the practice with the editing. We've all probably used track changes before in Word, but not to the extent that you will as an editor. And so these projects are sent to you. If you only want, to edit one article a week, if you're doing this on the side, you just let them know that that's what you want to do, and they're fine with it. Um, and so you start building up those skills. And as you are doing that, uh, you will also start working on, def more specifically defining your coaching niche and who you, like I said, who you want to work with and how you want to help them. Um, as well as the networking and connecting with people and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think your case is, sort of the classic example of what I teach, where the idea is that you get that money coming in, you get the practice editing, and over, a handful of months, I would say, really the goal is 6 months to a year, you will be working exclusively with private clients, working your network in academia. If you go to conferences still, you can hand out if you have a business card for editing, you connect with people that way, and they will just start contacting you. It worked for me, and I've see it happening with the people um, who are in the cohort right now. Um, and so, yeah. Do you have any questions about that?
Yeah, I guess I did have one question. Um, so it sounds like, you think, so for me, I basically think I've been thinking about this for such a long time, and it's really just about the impetus to actually explore. So it may be that your January course is just the impetus I need. Um, One question I had, you were talking about editing agencies, and I meant to write a couple of them down just to take a look. Could you repeat some of those?
Sure. Let me type them in the chat. Scribendi is a good one. They're a Canadian company. Oops. They're a Canadian company, and so like because of some tax issues, like if you live in New Hampshire and a few other states, they won't hire you. But other than that, they're actually really helpful. They're one place that I started, and they actually give you paid training. So when you first start with them, it's mandatory. You go through this whole training process, and they teach you what they expect, but it's paid, so you're not, expected to do this for free. There's another one that a lot of my students have gone to is called eContent Pro. Um, and I want to reiterate that these these are not places that I would recommend that you work for long term because of the low pay and because so many of the documents that you're going to get to edit are very badly written. And a lot of them, I think, are scholars from around the world who it's just their English is not very good and they're trying to get published, and these are the only resources that they have for getting their papers edited. Um, and with that said, on the editing side, it is more challenging work. But again, it's just for practice. So some other ones, these are just off the top of my head. Taylor and Francis has its own. Cambridge, I think. Um, if you join the course, I have a whole list of over 100 agencies. And again, there are some that are science specific. I think SciEdit, I'm just trying to remember. I think SciEdit is another one. And on that Google sheet, when people in the community apply to these jobs, we all sort of crowdsource this feedback, so that like, oh, this company's not hiring right now, so I'm not going to waste my time applying there. Or, oh, this company pays worse than everybody else, so I'm not going to waste my time applying there. And so we're sort of using that as a space where everybody can crowdsource that information, and help each other, right? So that the rising tide lifts all boats, right? Would somebody else, maybe somebody who wants to do specific coaching work, want to volunteer? And I see I think somebody enrolled in the course. Yep, if you're willing to share that you enrolled. So one of those three spots is taken. So there's two left. Any other volunteers, people interested in coaching? Oh, Lisa will be number two. Thank you, Lisa. Happy to have you with us. Or maybe the rest of you are interested in editing. I'm happy to talk about editing.
I guess I can do it. I'm interested in both. But I'm new at all of this and so but am I work as a sociologist at Rutgers, and I got tenure at a previous university, and then I switched over to the institution where I'm at now, and I'm going up for tenure on an abbreviated clock. But I recently, very recently, through Upwork, have started to do a couple editing projects. I would say mostly editing projects, but now that I've heard you talk, I feel like I do have a lot of those developmental like editing skills or just like coaching skills. And for right now, like still in academia and everything like that, but I've always found it a good idea to try to make a little bit more money. But with, being a mom and also being a program coordinator, I don't have much time, but I do want to be able to make a little bit of money and help a couple folks. So yeah.
Can I ask what has been your experience on Upwork?
I find at first it's hard because you have to put out a lot of like basically a lot of cover letters. Like you have to really be very proactive, and then you have to buy these little tokens that allow you to kind of put yourself like first in line. So the first couple weeks I was just like, oh, I don't know, because I wanted to make some money as I was transitioning between jobs. And and so at first I was like, I don't know. But then I was able to land a pretty big project where I wrote a big literature review, a program review, and a very small like kind of synthesis report. And yeah, I made like a couple $1,000s with that project in like a month and a half or so. And then um, another person had heard about me through someone who wound up not working with me, but it recommended me to help them with cover letters for jobs, for tenure track jobs. So I wound up doing that. So I've had like somewhat success, but it seems like it's a lot of work when you do it on Upwork.
Yeah, and I remember we talked about, I think we connected on Instagram. I remember you saying that. But yeah, I think that is a lot of people who want to get into editing, that's like the first place that they go to look. I remember that's where one of the places I started. And it's really discouraging because or it can be because understandably, the people who go there as clients are looking to hire the editors who have all the five-star reviews. So when you're first starting out, it's tough to get noticed because you don't have any reviews, and so you're this unknown quantity to the client on the client side. Um, and so, and then the other thing I found with these marketplaces, like I'm on Reedsy too, which you have to have experience to be able to get onto Reedsy. You have to have like edited multiple books and stuff. Um, I get a ton of requests on Reedsy, but most people don't go with me because I won't charge the bottom of the barrel rates. Like I'm not willing to reduce my rates, especially because Reedsy takes like a 20% cut of whatever you earn. Um, and so those sites can be tough because I feel like it's this race to the bottom as far as pricing. Editors feel like they have to charge less and less. And so I mean, it's if you do have success, which it sounds like you have, then, that's great. If it works for you, go for it. I typically stay away from them and suggest other people stay away from them just because I think you could do a bit better, get more reliable work from these agencies. But if you are getting work somewhere like Upwork, that you can apply it, the same way you would think about an agency where you're able to practice your skills. Maybe you are charging lower rates so that you can get the work, but you're still using it as practice. And as a way to network, right? I know they don't want you to go off platform with any clients, um, but let's be honest, like if somebody else contacts you, if one of your clients from Upwork contacts you outside of it, then, go ahead and work with them. So yeah, so I think, um, definitely, as I said earlier, it's very easy to pair something like developmental editing with book coaching. Um, or I have a podcast, and in the last, was it the last? I think it was with trying to remember which episode it was now, and they're all kind of blurring together. There was one of the more recent episodes. I talked with an editor who does exactly that. I think it was Molly Mullen was the one. She's a developmental editor and she works as a book coach. And so it's very easy to come up with a package that you offer to clients where you say, I'll do this developmental edit of your book, and then we can have, three 30-minute sessions or three 60-minute sessions or whatever it is that they want, where you walk them through the changes, right? Or maybe somebody comes to you and they've got a book contract, but they've gotten all these peer reviews saying you have to make this list of changes before we'll publish it. And so maybe you set up 2 or 3 sessions with them where you meet on Zoom and you give them feedback. And as you know, as a book author, it's a long process and it can be really challenging, right? I mean, it's emotionally draining to get to carry this book through this whole process. And so I think it can be really helpful, especially if you're a scholar who's written a book and you have that empathy because you've been there, you know how hard it is. You are in many ways, helping this person just kind of stick to deadlines, keep on that timeline, keep on track, keep meeting their writing goals until they get to the finish line. And so that's something in the course that we would go through is first, working with you to continue getting those editing jobs, but then also coming up with whatever kind of offer that you would want to make. If you put together some editing packages or just one-on-one or whatever. Yeah. Does that help?
Thank, yes, very much so. Thank you so much. It's great.
Any other questions? Did we? So we've got Lisa and Nancy, who I think had to go. Lisa and Nancy enrolled. We've got one last spot with the free coaching and the essential skills course. Any other questions about anything, the coaching or the editing or the course or anything like that? Welcome, Anne, by the way.
I guess I have one more question. This is like maybe like okay, do you do you feel like you have to also do this side coaching on how to be a coach thing to make a living, or is that just something you're also very passionate about?
That's a great question. So I started editing the freelancing like with the agencies in 2020, maybe about like summer of 2020, which was great timing because I, was working from home. Um, uh, and I did that until probably the start of 2022 or so, I think is when I started attracting private clients and started making more money that way. Um, Last year, so 2023, I worked almost exclusively with private clients. I think I was still doing some books for a publisher, and I made about $75,000. As faculty, as an assistant professor, I was making about 62, I think, in 2019 when I left. And so making that 75,000, I was working probably 25 or 30 hours a week. That was just the editing. I may have done a few coaching calls, but in an editing capacity. This year I'm on track to make over 100, but that is a mix of editing and the course. But I'm still only working 30 hours a week. I think the work that I put into the course has, I've cut back on the editing work to make time for the course. And the reason that I put this course together is because I saw a need for it. I think I kept, I'm in these like PhD moms groups on Facebook and stuff, and I see so many people who are just so unhappy. And it reminded me of me and that experience that I went through where I was miserable. I had students making violent threats, during like the 2016 election, and I had colleagues who were just horrible. And I dreaded going to work every day. And yet I was terrified to leave. I remember making that call to my department chair and I was shaking physically because I was so terrified. And looking back, I think how ridiculous that was because who cares? Like she never talked to me again because I left. Uh, like these people that I thought were my friends never talked to me again, unfriended me on Facebook, all this stuff. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law is dying of cancer, like anyway, I saw how many people are so unhappy and were um, going through everything that I went through alone, you know? And I had been alone, and it breaks my heart. I mean, I had my first webinar like this back in May, and one of the women who ended up enrolling in my first cohort, she emailed me and said, that she cried after that webinar because it was the first time she ever felt like she was worth something, that like academia had just totally beaten her down and she felt like she couldn't do anything outside of academia. And that told me that like people need help, like if I can help people see that you don't have to stay, there are other things you can do, that your skills are valuable outside of academia, and you can make more money too and work fewer hours. That's a bonus. So that's why, that was the motivation for the course. It is nice making money, right? I enjoy coaching. I enjoy that it allows me to have freedom to spend more time with my kids and that flexibility. But I think that's what I was really after. And the connection, I think it's nice. Every week we get to sit in a room like this and talk about what we're challenged by and, how do we build our business. And there's a lot of, it's very rewarding to know that everything that you do is coming back to you. You're not doing it for students, you're not doing it for a department chair, you're not doing it for your provost. Every minute that I spend on my business is for me, and um yeah, sorry, I ramble sometimes, but I am passionate about it. Any other questions? Okay.
Hi. Well, I'm not sure that my background, um, I'm not sure if it's adequate for doing what you're talking about. Excuse me, I did teach on the university level, graduate and undergraduate students, music, and I taught a couple of language um, classes, literature, and diction classes. But like I said, once I finished my doctorate, I, I ended up totally like taking a left turn in Cucamonga. I started working with trio programs. And so my background with that is not only working with undergraduate students, but writing grants for continued funding. Some of the things that I have done since then, the last thing I did was serving as a reader editor for the upcoming Student Support Services grant. I read 3 sections of 5 institutions' proposals and found myself doing some trying not to do some editing, but giving them feedback as far as were they answering the questions that the Department of Education was looking for. Um, so I just don't know. I just don't know if what I have done works in this venue.
I mean, because from what I'm hearing you say about editing the grants and all that stuff, that sounds to me like academic editing. And
Yeah.
is it that you're not comfortable editing research papers, or what is it that makes you feel like you wouldn't be the right fit for that sort of thing?
I'm not sure if I have, well, I guess research papers. I mean, I think that I think that I do really well with, looking at something and going, this line doesn't work, or it's sort of convoluted, and you can make it shorter. And I don't think I've actually done um, editing of research papers. So, but in some ways, the when you're writing these grants for these TRIO programs, you do have to do some research in order to get the data that you're looking for. So, maybe I have, and I'm just not able to connect it with what you're talking about.
So let me propose this. This link that I've just shared in the chat, that is to a page of several of the people who are in the cohorts, either the July or the current one, September. And that gives you an idea of what their websites look like and what they do. There's one woman there named Laura Wasilenki, I think is how you pronounce her last name. She is a scientist, but she's decided to focus her business on editing grant proposals. And it's not that she doesn't edit other papers, but that's her main focus because she's had a lot of success in writing grants as a scientist and a PI. And so if you are more comfortable editing grants or similar documents, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. I think that's a very comfortable little niche that you could focus on. And, obviously it doesn't have to be science related grants. It could be for nonprofits or for higher education institutions, or, in that sense, you might think of yourself as a consultant. And connect with use your existing connections to government agencies, or I'm not in that space, so I'm not as familiar with it, but I've worked for researchers who work for the Department of Agriculture, or like those kinds of, like, there's still academic research, it's just it's more of a state level agency type work. um so I think that you could certainly try out editing the research papers, the scholarship, if you wanted to, but with an eye to focusing on grants, or, maybe like why my brain isn't working today. Um, like program evaluation reports, or, any kind of assessment type stuff like that. Um, and so you can take that expertise that you have in this particular subject area and channel it as your niche for editing and consulting. Does that
Thank
make
you.
sense? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions? We had Anne and Austin came in a little bit after we started, or Michelle, if you have a question, I'm happy to chat. I know Anne, Anna, right? Who was in the first group. She's doing fantastic.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, I actually, because she and I used to work at one of the major public universities out here in Philly, and then it looks like we both kind of moved on, and we've been chatting back and forth about honestly just what life looks like when you're adjuncting, and yeah, kind of what we'd like to do next. And I realized that I did come in like super late. I didn't check my schedule. I guess I should ask, is there will I be able to take a look at the recording of the call later?
Yes, yeah, as soon as we're
Okay.
done, I'm going to I have to download it and then I will upload it to YouTube and I'll send out the link to everybody who's registered today. So you can catch the first part. Yeah.
Okay. And it does sound then like we're kind of trying to think over our, say our current work, former work, because I know from my position right now, I'm uh essentially editing and kind of doing virtual assistant stuff for a professor in a disability studies department. And then before that, I worked a lot with graduate students from different departments, education, art history, um, journalism, those kinds of things.
So you've done some editing before then.
Yeah, I haven't, I mean, yeah, I actually was the assistant editor for a book when I was an undergraduate, like eons ago. But yeah, for a while, people would contact the English department where I was a grad student and say, "Oh, like I'm an art history major. I'm a second language learner. Can somebody take a look at my paper?" So I was doing some editing for actually two Korean students who were working on art art history, and then picked up some work for a nursing department, and then now I'm editing philosophy papers.
Oh, that's great. So, I mean, so you know how it works then, right? You've got this introduction to editing for these different types of documents, and I think it's just a question of figuring out how we can set up a website for you, how we can get you set up on LinkedIn, and you can just start expanding those connections. Another thing I thought of as you were talking is so when I first started seeking out private clients, I sent out a lot of cold emails to people all over the country. And um, as I said earlier, it's like planting the seed, right? Like you send out these emails and you don't hear anything back, and you think, oh, nobody wants to hire me. I'm failing. This is terrible. But then
Uh,
4 months down the road, somebody replies to one of those emails and you can see like, oh, I sent this back in March and they're writing me now, and you
oh,
realize like they had saved this email somewhere with the intention of contacting you when they had a project ready for you. And so
right.
that's one of the approaches is, to cold email people or something else that works, like you mentioned, working for specific departments. I like sometimes to contact the administrative assistant in a particular department, or if there's like a research institute on campus or something, or Denise, for you, maybe you get connected with some people in some of these administrative offices, and basically, if you can win the favor of that admin person, they will then share your information with anybody who needs an editor. I somehow lucked into that with somebody at Harvard in an institute at Harvard, and I got like 6 clients who were they were all foreign researchers, like guest people on visiting faculty from, I think they were all from Japan. And this admin assistant who I had randomly emailed gave out my information to all these people. And so I was able to benefit from that. So as you were talking about the departments, I thought that's another great strategy to get connected in that way.
Paulina, in the chat earlier on, I mentioned that when I was completing my doctorate, I had an assistantship um, in at an advising center, and I ended up being the advisor for this cohort of students called, not a cohort, but a program called Commanding English. And so the director and I sort of wrote a small grant or proposal to the voice division um, to take a voice class to help they were not ESL students, but they needed more English writing, reading, and speaking in English. And so we had a class which I would not call this now, but it was called accent reduction through singing. And but I also had an opportunity to work with a couple of international students who wanted to be able to speak better in their did I say yeah, graduate assistants to be able to speak better in their classes. So when you mentioned the second language learner, people who needed editing, that just sort of kind of sparked my interest. And the majority of the students that I worked with were Vietnamese or Hmong, and where their vocal line is very, to what in my words, sort of staccato. And so I was working with them, elongating their vowels in order to be able to and be better understood. And so, I don't know. I don't know whether that could translate into helping second language learner graduate students or whomever, to be able to help them as an editor. What do you think?
Well, I mean, just hearing you talk about that, I mean, that could be your niche, right? Just if assuming that's the kind of work that you wanted to continue, is sounds like a diction maybe is the right word to
Mhm.
for helping people with their pronunciation and things. And
Mhm.
I mean, that's the beauty of online businesses today is you can make an online business out of anything you want, you know? And so if you wanted to specialize in working with English language learners, and that sort of thing, you could set up Zoom calls, you know? You could create a program where you say, I work with you for 6 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever, however long it takes, and we meet once a week for an hour. And if you get the 6 week package, it's $600. You get the 12 week package, it's 1200, whatever you end
Mhm.
up wanting to charge. Um, and you meet with them and you talk whatever it was that you were teaching them in person, you could do online. And maybe you come up with some worksheets or something like supplementary reading or whatever. I clearly know nothing about this particular aspect, but
Yeah.
whatever materials you want to present to them to help them achieve this goal, you come up with that kind of coaching package. And then it's just a matter of putting yourself in front of them, and maybe you contact international student centers around the country and say, hi, here's my website. This is my experience. Maybe you send them a resume, this showing that you are legit and you're not just trying to take advantage of people or something, that you actually
Mhm.
do have experience in this. And, here's my services. And then they can do the legwork for you and share your information, put a flyer up on the board in the student center, and people start contacting you that way. But this is the kind of work that we do in the cohort and in the community, is sort of helping you think through, first, what is it that brings me joy? What do I actually want to spend my time doing? And then how do I get there? How do I craft an offer that makes sense, that is both affordable for graduate students, but also, pays you enough to make it worth your time? Because working with grad students, that can be a bit of a challenge. You want to make
Mm.
sure that they can actually afford it. Um, and how do we get your name out there so that people can find you and hire you?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if you think of anything, please send me an email. You can reply to any of the emails that I've sent you. As soon as I hop off here, I will set up the recording and link it on YouTube and send that around so you can check out the replay again if you like. And I think there's one spot left for that free coaching session and the essential skills course. Hi, Kitty. And so if you're interested, go for it. And then, yeah, after that, just one other spot left for the January cohort. Love to have either of you in there with us. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Okay. Thanks so much for showing up, for being here. It was fun talking with you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
you're
Take
welcome.
care and have a great weekend.
You too.